I'm 63. I was exhausted every day until I added these 7 iron foods to my diet. Energy is back. When I turned 60, I kept waiting for this magical shift where I would finally feel like myself again. Everyone told me that 60s was the new 40s, that with the right mindset and the right wellness practices, I could feel vibrant and energized. But here's what nobody told me. I was missing something fundamental at the cellular level, and all the yoga practice in the world wasn't going to fix it if my blood wasn't carrying enough oxygen to my muscles and my brain. For nearly 2 years, I was exhausted. Not the tired that comes from a bad night's sleep or from pushing yourself too hard at the gym. This was a bone-deep fatigue that made climbing the stairs in my Austin home feel like climbing a mountain. I'd wake up after 8, 9, sometimes 10 hours of sleep, and I still felt like I'd been hit by a truck. I'd get through my coaching sessions with my clients, and then I'd come home and just collapse. I'd cancel yoga class. I'd cancel plans with friends. I'd sit on my porch wondering if this was just what being in your 60s meant, if I was going to spend the next 30 years feeling like a battery that was permanently at 15%. I went to my doctor. Blood work came back normal, thyroid normal, vitamin D normal, blood pressure perfect. "You're fine, Diana," she said. "You're just getting older." And that was it. I left that appointment feeling even more frustrated because I knew something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. But according to every test they'd run, I was apparently the picture of health. The truth was, I was about to discover, those tests weren't even looking at the right thing. Here's what I want to share with you today because I know, based on everything I've learned in my 28 years as a principal and now as a health coach, that some of you listening right now are in exactly that same place. You're tired. You're so tired that you've stopped even asking why. And I want to tell you about the 7 foods that changed my entire life. But more importantly, I want to help you understand what was actually happening inside my body so that you can figure out if this is happening to you too. Let me start with the bomb drop, the thing that absolutely shocked me when I learned it. Iron deficiency is the #1 nutritional deficiency in the entire world. Not vitamin D, not vitamin B12, iron. And when you're a woman over 60, you're in a very specific high-risk category. And I'll tell you exactly why in just a moment. But the second shocking thing, the thing that really explained my situation, is that you can be iron deficient without being anemic. You can have hemoglobin levels that look completely normal on a blood test, while your body is absolutely starving for iron. That was me. That was my entire problem. And my doctor had no idea to even look for it. So let me give you the 7 foods that transformed my energy. And then we're going to go deep into the science of why these foods work, why your body might not be absorbing iron properly, and what exactly you should be testing for. The first food is beef liver. Now, I know that's not something most of us grew up wanting to eat, but I need you to understand the power of this one. 3 ounces of beef liver contains 5 milligrams of iron, and that's the most bioavailable form of iron that exists in food. The second is red meat. A 3-ounce serving of lean beef or bison contains 2.6 milligrams of iron, and it's in that highly absorbable form called heme iron that your body was literally designed to use. The third is sardines. 1 can of sardines, and I'm talking about the ones packed in water that you can get at any grocery store, contains 2.5 milligrams of iron. Plus, they have calcium for your bones and omega-3s for your brain. The fourth is lentils. 1 cooked cup of lentils has 3.3 milligrams of iron, though this is non-heme iron, which I'll explain in just a moment. The fifth is cooked spinach, and this is important. It has to be cooked. 1 cup of cooked spinach contains 6.4 milligrams of iron because cooking breaks down the oxalates that block iron absorption. The sixth is pumpkin seeds. Just 1 ounce contains 2.5 milligrams of iron, and they're incredibly satisfying as a snack. And the seventh is dark chocolate, 70% cacao or higher, with 3.4 milligrams of iron per ounce, which means you can literally have a piece of dark chocolate as medicine. Now, here's where my own story becomes a teaching moment for you. Because I had discovered something strange in my blood work when I finally got my doctor to test for ferritin. Ferritin is not hemoglobin. This is the critical distinction that most mainstream doctors don't emphasize enough. Ferritin is your body's iron storage. It's the warehouse where you keep your iron reserves for the future. Hemoglobin is what's in your red blood cells right now, carrying oxygen. You can have completely normal hemoglobin, which is what my test showed, while your ferritin is completely depleted, which is what was actually happening to me. When my doctor finally tested ferritin, and she only did this because I kept pushing, my number came back at 18 nanograms per milliliter. The lab report said that anything over 12 is normal. You know what I call that? I call that survival. That's not optimal. That's not thriving. That's your body barely getting by. The optimal ferritin range for a woman over 60, based on everything I've learned from the research and from my own experience as a health coach, is 50 to 150 nanograms per milliliter. Most conventional labs are using outdated reference ranges that were established decades ago, and they're frankly just wrong for women in our age group who want to have energy and vitality. So I was at 18 when I should have been at 50 at minimum. That's why I was exhausted. That's why every single task felt like I was moving through water. My cells couldn't carry enough oxygen because my iron stores were completely depleted. Let me explain why women over 60 are so vulnerable to iron deficiency in the first place, because understanding this context is going to help you figure out if this is your issue. First, there's the stomach acid situation. As we age, particularly after 60, our stomach acid naturally decreases. Iron needs an acidic environment to be absorbed in the small intestine. If you don't have enough stomach acid, you can be eating iron-rich foods all day long and your body simply isn't absorbing them. It's like having a mail carrier who doesn't show up to deliver your letters. The second reason is chronic inflammation. So many women in our age group are dealing with ongoing inflammation in the gut, from food sensitivities, from past antibiotics, from stress, from environmental toxins. And that inflammation damages the intestinal lining and impairs nutrient absorption. The third reason is medications. If you're taking proton pump inhibitors, which are drugs that reduce stomach acid for acid reflux, you're literally making it harder for your body to absorb iron. Antacids do the same thing. The fourth reason is undetected gastrointestinal bleeding. This could be from ulcers, from hemorrhoids, from inflammatory bowel conditions that haven't been diagnosed, or even from NSAIDs like ibuprofen that you've been taking for years. Every day that there's microscopic or visible bleeding in your digestive tract, you're losing iron. So when I started adding these 7 foods to my diet, I wasn't just adding them randomly. I was being very strategic about it. And this is the science part that I really want you to understand because it changes everything about how you should be eating these foods. There's a massive difference between heme iron and non-heme iron. Heme iron comes from animal sources, the beef liver, the red meat, the sardines. Non-heme iron comes from plant sources, the lentils, the spinach, the pumpkin seeds, the dark chocolate. Here's the staggering difference. Heme iron is absorbed at a rate of 15 to 35% when you eat it. Non-heme iron is absorbed at a rate of only 2 to 20%. That means heme iron is 2 to 3 times better absorbed than non-heme iron, which is exactly why those animal sources are so powerful. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is the deep cut that I learned from the research. You can actually make your non-heme iron absorption skyrocket by pairing it with vitamin C. When you eat lentils with tomato sauce, or spinach with citrus, or pumpkin seeds with an orange, you increase the absorption of that non-heme iron by up to 6 times. 6 times! That's not a small thing. That means a cup of cooked spinach with a glass of fresh squeezed orange juice is actually much more powerful than you would think. I started doing this systematically, and I could feel the difference in my energy within weeks. Now, there's also the blocking factor, and this was something I had to completely change in my daily life. If you consume tea or coffee within 1 hour of eating an iron-rich meal, you decrease iron absorption by approximately 60%. Tea and coffee contain compounds called tannins, and these tannins bind to iron and make it unavailable to your body. I had been a coffee drinker my entire life, often drinking coffee with lunch or right after eating. I had to shift my coffee consumption to the morning, away from my meals. Calcium supplements also block iron absorption, which is a major issue because so many women over 60 are told to take calcium supplements for bone health. If you're going to take calcium, it cannot be within 2 hours of an iron-rich meal. This is the kind of granular nutritional knowledge that changes everything. One more thing I discovered during this process, and I found this study in the Journal of the American Dietetic Association, was that cooking in cast iron actually leaches iron into your food. When you cook in cast iron, you're literally adding iron to your meal. Now, not all of that iron is perfectly bioavailable, but it's additional iron nonetheless. I started cooking more of my meals in cast iron, particularly acidic foods like tomato sauce and lentil stew, because the acid in these foods causes even more iron to leach into the food. It was like I had a secret weapon that was right there in my kitchen the entire time. So here's what I did in practical terms. I committed to 8 weeks of very intentional eating. Every single day, I was having at least one meal that included one of these 7 foods. I was pairing non-heme iron with vitamin C. I was shifting my coffee consumption away from my meals. I was cooking more in cast iron. I was eating beef liver once a week, even though I had to get over my childhood resistance to it. I made it into pâté with herbs and butter, and it became something I actually looked forward to. I was eating red meat 3 times a week. I was having a can of sardines twice a week. I was cooking lentils and spinach regularly. I was snacking on pumpkin seeds. I was having my piece of dark chocolate in the afternoon. And I was doing it all very deliberately and systematically. After 8 weeks, I got my ferritin tested again. The number came back at 65 nanograms per milliliter. For the first time in nearly 2 years, I had reached an optimal range. And the difference in how I felt was absolutely undeniable. I woke up with energy. I could teach my yoga classes again without feeling like I was moving in slow motion. I could go for walks in my Austin neighborhood and actually enjoy them instead of just pushing through them. I could sit and talk with my clients for a full day without that bone-deep exhaustion creeping in by 3 o'clock in the afternoon. My brain felt sharper, my mood lifted. It was like someone had turned the volume back up on my life. But I need to give you a really important warning here, and I'm saying this with the care of someone who has studied health for nearly a decade now. You should never supplement with iron without first testing your ferritin levels. Iron overload is a real and dangerous condition called hemochromatosis. If you have the genetic predisposition to store too much iron, and you start taking iron supplements without knowing your baseline, you can cause serious damage to your organs. Men, postmenopausal women, and people of certain genetic backgrounds are at higher risk. So the first step, the non-negotiable first step, is to get your ferritin tested. Ask your doctor specifically for a serum ferritin test. If they say your hemoglobin is normal and dismiss you, push back. Tell them you want the ferritin number. Get that number in your hand. Then, if it's below 50, start adding these foods deliberately to your diet the way I did. These 7 foods are where the transformation begins. This is the foundational work. Add the foods, pair them intelligently, remove the blockers, and give your body 8 weeks to rebuild its iron stores. Most of you, if you do this work, will feel a profound shift. But I also want to tell you that there might be other things going on underneath this. If you've been dealing with chronic digestive issues, or if you're on certain medications, or if you have an undiagnosed GI bleed, you might need to work with a functional medicine practitioner, or a gastroenterologist to address those root causes. The iron foods are the foundation, but they're not the whole picture for everyone. What I'm excited to share with you next is the story of vitamin D, because so many of us think we have vitamin D covered, and we actually don't. The research that's come out in the last 5 years is genuinely transformative, and I'm going to walk you through exactly what your optimal vitamin D level should be, how to test for it, and which forms of vitamin D are actually absorbable. But that's coming next, and I want you to hold space for that because it's equally important as this iron conversation. For now, I want you to do this. I want you to order a ferritin test. Call your doctor, ask for it specifically, get that number. In the meantime, start looking at how you're eating. Start introducing these 7 foods if you're not already eating them. If you're a coffee drinker, move your coffee consumption away from your meals. If you have cast iron in your kitchen, start using it. And notice how you feel. Notice your energy levels. Notice your mood. Notice how you feel climbing stairs. Notice how far you can walk. Notice what you can accomplish in a day without feeling completely drained. These small, specific, research-backed changes are the things that transform our lives in our 60s and beyond. You deserve to feel vital. You deserve to have energy. And I promise you, the path is there. You just have to follow it.